Hello and welcome back to High School History. Let's very quickly look at the expected questions in the CBSE boards for 2020 in the subject History. Today we're going to be looking at Theme 9, Kings and Chronicles. And before we go ahead, like I have been doing with this particular series, that remember that this video does not cover everything. It is only estimates based on previous year's questions, so don't limit yourself to just studying these questions. Move beyond what I'm discussing as well. Before we go ahead, do remember to like and share this video with your friends and others who are appearing for the exam. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon so that you're the first to know when I post a video. If you wish, you may join a closed Facebook group which I have linked in the description box below to further discuss questions. And if you have any specific questions from the topic, you can put in your question in the comments below. So let us start with the chapter. On page 225, you have a quick discussion on the nomenclature or how the Mughals refer to themselves. The word Mughal derives from Mongol or Mowgli from Rudyard Kipling's book, but the Mughals themselves called themselves the Timurids. Then the page also very quickly gives you a succession of rulers of the Mughals, starting from Babur right down to Aurangzeb. Of course, these were known as the Greater Mughals, and after Aurangzeb, the Mughal Empire begins to disintegrate, so they are known as the Lesser Mughals. Now, this section can come for 1 or 3 marks. Pages 226 to 227, they talk about the production of chronicles. They discuss why chronicles were produced and the process by which. So there is a 5-step process in the production of chronicles. This has been quite a favorite with the examiners in the past years, so you might want to take this particular section quite seriously. Then there is also a very quick discussion on translations and how the various Mughal emperors commissioned the translation of many of the known pre-Islamic Indian texts. And then there is also a list of chronicles and which king they represent. So for example, you have Baburnama, which is Babur's story. You have the Humayunama by Gulbadan Banu Begum, where she writes about her brother Humayun. Then you have the Akbarnama, then the Tuzuki Jahangiri, the Badshahnama, and the Alamgirnama. Now this section can come 1, 3 or 8 markers. Moving on to page 228, there is a quick discussion on how important calligraphy was and the fact that Nastaliq was the favorite calligraphic style of Emperor Akbar. Now this section can also come for 1 or 3 marks. Then page 228 to 230, they discuss about paintings, the problem with paintings, especially when the ulama raised objections to it, what were their reasons. Moving on to Persian influences and famous artists of the Mughal period. The debate with the ulama is of particular importance. The textbook gives it a lot of importance here because you also have source 1, which where Abul Fazl discusses the importance of paintings, and in a later source there is also an answer that Abul Fazl has for the ulama who are against representation of humans and animals and birds in paintings. From this section also 1 or 3 markers are expected. You might also want to prepare for an 8 marker from this section. Page 230 to 232, you have a more detailed discussion on Akbarnama and Badshahnama, who wrote both these books. So you have Abul Fazl's brief biography, and you also have references to Abdul Hamid Lahori, who started work on the Badshahnama. So when Lahori fell ill, Badshahnama was completed by the historian Waris. Page 232 to 235, you have concepts of the ideal kingdom, because these chronicles were supposed to represent a certain image of the emperor. And then there is a concept of divine light, which Abul Fazl goes on to discussing in great detail, and how that leads to Sulh-e-Kul, which also occurs towards the end of the chapter. So if you get a question on Sulh-e-Kul, you will pick up the concept from here as well as the end of the chapter. And especially the Akbarnama also talks about a social contract. You may have studied social contract in class 9 in the context of the French Revolution. Abul Fazl is talking about how it is the duty of the king to look after the interests of his subjects, and in turn the subjects owe the king loyalty. So this section is very important from this chapter, so you may expect 1, 3 or 8 markers from here. Then on page 236, you have capitals and courts. You have 3 capital cities of the Mughals. You have Lahore, Delhi and Agra. Akbar did try to settle Fatehpur Sikri, a new city, but due to water shortage, they couldn't continue there much longer. And of course, then you have Shah Jahan, who set up Shah Jahanabad, and he is known for his spectacular architectural works. So you may get 1 or 3 mark questions on various details about architecture. Page 237 to 240 is a discussion on the Mughal court, how it was laid out, how people were positioned in the court, what kind of etiquette they were supposed to follow, and also the daily schedule of the emperor. Now, this section is actually quite easy. If you read it a couple of times, it should stick in your head. Daily schedule of the emperor has been asked in the past, so you could look at it recurring again. So this could be a 1, 3 or 8 mark question from this section. Then on page 241, there is the idea of titles and gifts and how important titles and gifts were in the Mughal court, and how what titles you had actually marked out your journey of rise in the Mughal court, and the gifts that were given to the emperor when people came visiting him, and the fact that the emperor also would endow the visitor with gifts. These were seen as moments of great celebration and pride by the recipients of the gifts from the emperors. So this section, you might expect a question of 1 or 3 marks from here. Page 242 to 243, there is a discussion of the imperial household. Who were the people within the imperial household? The fact that marriage was seen as a very powerful way of creating political alliances, which brings in the Rajputs into the Mughal fold as well and makes them co-rulers. Then there is also the question of status of women in the harem, especially the queens and begums, and the different categories of wives and concubines that the emperor had, and how these positions could be fairly fluid. And there is a special discussion on Gulbadan Begum, who wrote Humayun-Nama, and what is her perspective on Humayun. Noor Jahan as someone who actually became politically extremely active, and also Jahan Ara, who was possibly one of the richest women of her time, who actually carried on trade through her agents. From this section, you can also expect questions for 1, 3 or 8 marks. Page 244 to 246 discusses imperial officials, how they were recruited, how their ranks were fixed, so which is the Mansabdari system. So Zat and Sawar are concepts that you need to know. Then there might be a statement that the nobility was like a bouquet of flowers which was tied by their common loyalty to the king. So justify this statement. So this actually has been taken from this blue or purple box. Depends on what color your textbook has. Mine looks blue. And the CBSE has clarified that nothing is to be left out of the chapter. So we are expecting questions to come from these blue boxes as well. So the discussion is actually quite given here in quite some detail. So you might want to go through this to answer a question of this sort. Then as you go on through the pages, you will see that the important officials of the empire have been mentioned. So you need to know their Persian names as well and what were their roles within the empire. And then there is a discussion on record keeping and transmission of news, not only within the Mughal court but also in the more regional principalities. Again, questions could be for 1, 3 or 8 markers. Remember, 8 markers will always usually come in parts, and there will be tag questions, so it will not be very difficult for you to answer. Moving to page 247, it's a discussion on provincial administration, the fact that provincial administration sort of mirrors what is happening at the center but at a smaller scale. So here there is a discussion on how the offices were organized at the provincial level of administration, and the fact that there was an uneasy relationship between zamindars and the Mughals, because often the zamindars rebelled against the Mughals as well, and they would motivate the peasants to join them too. So since this is not a very lengthy section, we are only expecting either a 1 or a 3 mark question from here. Page 248, goes beyond the empire. So you're looking now at foreign policy with special reference to the Safavids of Kandahar, with special reference to the Safavids and their conquest of Kandahar, the Ottomans in the context of trade and pilgrimage, and also the Jesuits who had come to the Mughal court. And Akbar was actually very curious about what they had to preach. And for the longest time, the Jesuit fathers felt that Akbar was so interested in the religion, he's most likely to convert. Obviously, Akbar did not. But that discussion we're going to keep for slightly later. And then we conclude the chapter on page 251 with a quick discussion on the religious policy of Akbar, the idea of Sulh-e-Kul. If you remember, in the beginning part of the chapter, we discussed that. So if you're talking about Sulh-e-Kul, take points from both parts of the chapter. And then how the idea of the Ibadat Khana really follows the policy of Sulh-e-Kul, where Akbar listened to all religious discourses, but there was also a strict set of norms that you had to maintain, that you could not insult other religions. You only spoke about the merits of your own. So with this, we come to the end of today's session. I will be taking a couple of days break, but I will be back with more videos, and perhaps I'll be posting 2 in a day, and you can expect that by Monday or Tuesday. So which should give you enough time to prepare for your boards, which is scheduled on the 3rd of March. I have prepared this slide deck using Slide Mania. They have a lot of free templates and templates for Google Slides and PowerPoint. So you can make very interesting looking and visually very attractive PowerPoint presentations using Slides Mania. So with this, High School History says bye and best of luck.